like to call upon the first speaker of the government side of the house. For the first speaker, floor is yours. Don't forget to mention your PLI preference as well as set your own timer. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, so my POI preference is verbal. However, I'll take you at around the like 5-6 minute mark. And I won't take you before that time, but I will give you time. Don't worry about it. Okay. And my voice might lag in and out. So, and if I do, just like tell me that it's getting annoying, and then I'll like repeat some points or something. Okay. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a few things to characterize. Number one, the objectives of social activism and social movements and social groups and stuff like that. Number one is mostly to protect the power and the power of the marginalized, right? What does this mean? In the context of white hat hacking, it means the power of marginalized communities over their data and their own privacy. Since white hat hacking is there to protect marginalized from surveillance and the possibility of their information being used against them, or for black hat hackers to use it for their own personal vendettas in racially charged instances. We don't want this. We want better protection for our people because we are more vulnerable to these attacks, and we are more vulnerable to bigger magnitudes and worse outcomes from these attacks. Number two, we want to hold companies accountable, obviously, since these companies have the power to literally change the course of our action. Like they're able to lobby and like reach governments and so on and so forth. Number two, why white hat hacking exists. Number one, we want to ensure user privacy and respect the consent of the people that are around us. Number two, we want to ensure that big data isn't used for surveillance and oppression. And number three, we want to ensure that black hat hackers won't take advantage of this and use it to dox people and stalk them and so on and so forth. Number three, big companies who would be white hat hacked by our organization or by social groups would be companies that many people use. So like social media sites and stuff like that. These are companies that also have a lot of personal information on you, like your address, your race, your date of birth, and etc., etc. And number three, these are companies that if you were to give the type of information you have from an individual to a surveillance group or from someone else, they would be able to identify you. They would be able to find you and so on and so forth from like a little bit of more Googling or whatever. And number four, our mechanism. So the features of this is that as a social activism organization, we will be employing white hat hackers to hack into the databases of big companies, find security leaks, find security breaches. This would mean to implement facilities that are required for the hacking and then report them back to the company itself. Basically just like how white hat hacking works, but we'll be employing white hat hackers and giving them the facilities that are required to do this. Why is this likely to emerge or likely to be implemented or opted into? Number one, by social activists. Social activists are likely to support this because they want to protect the marginalized. Understand that the acquisition of data on its own isn't harmful, but when it is spread around and spread across, you can get a very comprehensive and detailed database about someone no matter what. Data leaks and security breaches create big data. This is particularly bad for the marginalized because identification is something that is historically used time and time again to oppress marginalized areas, to oppress and degrade the character of wrongfully convicted marginalized people. Number two, they can say that you as an atheist, that means that they can say that you as an atheist are likely to be violent because you have no morals, that you're likely to assault little boys because you're a gay man, that you're likely to brutally assault someone at a bar because you used to have alcoholism. Even outside the case that it is outside of a court, people can shun you. People can literally beat you in the streets because they know how you are. Or groups that find out your information, black hat hackers, can dox you and they can find you in streets and so on and so forth. But two, why is this likely to be opted into? Companies have no choice but to allow this to happen, to allow white hat hacking to happen, because number one, it's ethical and considered legal, right? But companies also want to be seen as good. They want their users to feel safe and uphold that image to retain attraction and customers. So if they were to oppose this, then more people would be skeptical and opt out from their services. Why will this be efficient? 2 points. Companies can oppose this, like we said before, so we don't really have any parties that will be an obstacle in our process of investing in ethical hacking and protecting the marginalized people. But number two, companies are now pressured to up their security and not be so careless about giving out data. They know that it's not only law enforcement that are implementing computer security laws, but now there are third NGO parties digging around. Unless they want to invest millions in programmers to cover their tracks, then they better stop distributing data around. No, thank you. the house, so we as a social activist group want to protect the power of marginalized. We don't want them to literally fear for their safety, fear for literally being themselves, fear for literally existing. We want everyone to be comfortable enough to exist as non-problematic identities without the fear of being wrongfully judged by due to society's pre-existing bias against them. We think to exist comfortably that way is a right, is a human right. But number two, we want everyone to have consent and voice over their information. Notice that there are negative externalities for having your data spread around, and we'll talk about this later on. This is not only data about you, but your mom, about your dad, about your partner that lives with you, about the people at your school, and so on and so forth. We don't want to infringe on the privacy of people, even if we're okay with our own information being spread around. Because no, thank you. You can't possibly ask for the consent of everyone around you because you likely won't remember all of them. Now, who are the protected actors in this? Now, the objective of the protected actor, which are the minorities, is of course, as someone who's marginalized, you want to protect the people around you. You want to protect yourself. You want to protect your communities. As marginalized people, you rely so much on your community simply because you don't think that you can rely on the authorities. We're so intertwined with the people around us. We might not have trust in our authorities, and that's why we don't want this information to be so easily accessible. But even then, nobody just wants their information to be spread around, right? Okay, now I'll take your POI. Okay, first argument then.
For people to perceive the action of like hacking by the social organization as ethical under your side of the house. We know people have been like skeptical towards hacking.
No. Even in the status quo, white hat hacking is already considered ethical hacking. Just look at how social media sees it and how it is portrayed in like sites and stuff like that. They call it white hat hacking and they call it ethical hacking. Black hat hacking is a different thing. This is not a debate on whether or not it is ethical, because by the society, it is already considered ethical. It is already considered legal. Okay, first argument on the protection of social movements. How do social movements work in the status quo? First of all, they're fighting for a cause, a good cause, but what hinders them from achieving their goals? Number one, the parties are opposing. Like, let's say we're talking about oil. Oil companies have so much influence, so much power. When big oil spills happen, the news doesn't actively report about it because they're brought off. So then they can and do use foul play in order to oppress your movement and make it die. They're not scared to use illegal means because they know they're not going to get caught. They're not going to get criminalized. They fully believe no one can oppose them. They buy off everybody. But number two, meanwhile, social movements typically start off from nothing. So they don't have connections, they don't have protection, they are vulnerable. Three, this means that their data and their safety are prone to being hijacked and circulated about to their needs. Not only are they going to use all means, legal or not, to obtain your data, they're going to use it to take you down. Why is data breach bad? Three cases. Firstly, to yourself. Obviously, now that your personal information has been breached, the party you're opposing kind of have control over you now. This means that things like where you live, your identity, your lifestyle, etc., this means that it's highly likely that you're going to be surveilled and that your movement may be greatly limited, as you're someone who is also a social activist, right? Number two, secondly, to your organization. Activist organizations obviously don't jump in and say, oh, we're going to do this tomorrow. No, they thoroughly plan it and make sure that it's all safe before launching. This is common sense. This is about the opportunity. So let's say things like riots, movements, and etc., they know it, and they get preemptivized those things before you even realize it. The point is that your movement will now be rendered useless because they have mitigated long before. This is about opportunities to suppress and oppress you, which we're trying to avoid. Thirdly, to your surroundings. Like we said before, you have families and they don't consent. Not everyone that you don't know the extent of how much data you've given realistically, right? And you can't realistically ask everyone that you know their consent on this because they also don't know the extent of the data that you've given. So that's why it's like a breach on that's irrespectful to their privacy as well. What do we need then? We need protection. We need sufficient protection not only for your organization, but personal data and important information that is confidential. So when we use these hackers, we prevent data breaches, security failures, and etc. And we want to protect our movement. Second argument on future precautions. This means that the people that this is why we use white hat hacking, because note that this is illegal hacking, like you've said before. The people you are opposing also can't take you down by taking you to court, etc., saying that you're illegal or whatever, because white hat hacking is different from black hats. It's ethical, it's legal, and with that, you have to propose.
Thank you very much for the fine speech. To continue the case, I would like to call upon the first speaker of the opposition side of the House. For the first speaker of the opposition side of the House, floor is yours. Don't forget to mention your POI preference as well as set your own timer. Here.
Wait, yeah, give me time to go to the bathroom first. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Just notify us when you return.
Okay, check. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible.
Okay. Preferred pronouns him, and if you have any POIs, I'll take one through the chat box and I will accept the most recent one. And when I accept the POI, then you can unmute yourself. So, okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. To begin with panels, we think that the government failed to prove you on 2 points. First, we think that why this is going to be strategic for the long run strategy of the company. They have to engage on their worst case scenario. Once they will be known by the public or by their target, like the government, for example, the government has more power to actually flip the blame and portraying the social organization as a criminal or be a lawbreaker, for example, lowering the urgency or the trust that you will be portraying in society as a whole. Knowing the fact that these secretive movements will be portrayed towards the public, government has more intention towards recovering their image and have more power or the capacity to actually blame you or maybe shift the blame towards the government towards the social movement to begin with. Secondly, we think why the alternative that social organization has, for example, like massive protests or maybe attacking companies and government institution directly through real life, for example, does not work or maybe not enough to create changes within society. We think that the alternative that we provide, what we have now, is so much better. This is less risky on creating a bad image later on, and this focuses on the and this discussion and the discussion of the societal discourse will only towards the evil actor because they know your intention, and the picturization that will be created under our house will be much clearer because we know the evil actors, i.e. the government and also the companies, not under discussion on whether or not these social organizations commit crime or not to begin with. We think also there is a missing line of analysis that will be created under their side. Their biggest claim is showing the idea of comfortability, right? One, we don't get how showing vulnerability of these companies will create changes and result anyway. How will they create changes under their side? What is the likelihood or maybe of government or maybe companies will change at the end of the day? Because think of it like this, they have a huge amount of funding. They don't really care. What they only care about is making these types of products. We don't get the likelihood as to why this is possible under their side of the house. Government team can only explain how is the trade-off from white hat hacking strategy will create the amount of direct harm, and there will be a follow-up that is more sustainable under their side, because the amount of budget that is given towards this type of social movements is very limited, and you need to contend with the fact that hiring these types of hackers cost a huge amount of budget to begin with. Moving on, we think what is our alternative here as opposition is that we keep doing the current process within the status quo. This means that the money under our side will be invested or be allocated heavily to victim restorations, getting medical amendments to sexual harassment cases, for example, all things that the system and institution could not provide towards these type of oppressed groups under our side. Or we, in the case of organizations like Greenpeace, we buy ship to do a long trip towards countries to spread regarding the idea of awareness. Thus, we think this is better simply because the impact is more certain and more direct, because the victim of these types of issues can directly gain benefit from this. Two arguments then coming from under our side of the house. First, how white hacking does not create any significant amount of discomfort towards the target. Second, I will talk about how we are better at efficiency within the movement. So moving on here, let's contextualize this debate. We think as social organizations, our main goal here is to create the idea of discomfort towards our target, i.e. these types of like companies, oligarchs, or maybe these types of governments, for example. We want to push them by making them uncomfortable as a form of movement as a whole. We want to change their behavior. We want to directly attack and also harm these types of evil actors at the end of the day. Why is uncomfortability important? It creates a discourse and attracting urgency towards a particular issue, i.e. in terms of protesting and also demonstrating, for example. It invokes attention and also a nuanced discussion within society. Because understand, we as a social movement is very much fed up towards the government and also company, because they don't have the incentive to change anyway. We think through the process of white hacking, you don't create any forms of threat at all. That is the silver lining that you need to understand. The only thing that white hacking provides is only to show vulnerability, not to impose any threat towards these types of companies to begin with. I.e., you only show them taking away massive amounts of data on cybersecurity. But the thing is, there is no after effects that is created because you only show these types of data while not creating any types of threat. Thus, white hacking is solely only limited for system improvement to begin with. We think as a movement, movement, this is totally harmful because this is wasting time and also improvement towards your movement as a whole. It's insignificant to actually push for changes and not strategic as a movement to begin with. Therefore, the comparative here is that if the white hacking is done towards those targets like politician, government, big companies, etc., their responses will likely be like, one, those actors will just cover the issue because they don't want to ruin their reputation to the public. For example, companies don't want their image to be bad in front of the customers, for example, right? What is the likelihood for these types of cases? Government, for example, has a lot of capital and amount of power compared to these types of movement, which has a limited amount of budget, for example. They have a huge control towards media. It is easy for them to wash or cleanse their own image because they can shut down these types of things to begin with. Yeah, it's okay. You can POI through the chat. It is easy for them to wash their types of hands and fixing their image to the public. They expose to the media that they have been hacked and sued by social organization, which eventually will only backstab the social organizations themselves. The likelihood is that they will use the narrative of hacking as inherently bad and violating the law and attacking the security. Therefore, they flip the back image from the government towards the social movement to begin with. This is not beneficial for the social organization because the image you portray in society is the most important thing. Our current image is to show that we want to go against these evil actors and show all the types of things that they have done to our minorities when we oppress people to begin with. But right now, our image, when you portray these types of things, you will only be seen as a lawbreaker and also a criminal, which eventually only going to shift the discussion from the social organization, from blaming the government towards yourself. Now, the comparative here is if we use our current strategy like protest or we attack towards company, this is so much better in creating uncomfortability because this strategy can create direct harms. But before I move on, yes.
Why would governments oppose white hat hacking when it protects the people, which is an incentive of the governments as a whole?
We think the correct incentive of the government is to actually clean their image as much possible as possible to begin with, right? Thus, when you show them the idea of vulnerability, they won't have the incentive to actually create changes to begin with. Under our side, therefore, the focus on these evil actors or society will pay attention on them to begin with. Second argument then, why we create efficiency as a movement. Understand that as a movement, you have a limited amount of time and also budget. You need to create changes as soon as possible, right? Where you rely on donations from members, for example. With the problem about investing in white hacking is four things. First, the impact is not certain. Understand how white hacking only shows the vulnerability, but does not guarantee any form of change. Secondly, it takes a huge amount of budget. Why? In context of massive companies or governments, for example, they already put so much budget to secure your system by creating an anti-hack systems. Thus, you as a movement need to put in more funding that takes a lot more funding in terms of quantity, for example, because you need to outweigh the quality of these types of like anti-hack systems that these companies already have. And secondly, we think the changes that you will create will not be effective at the end of the day because like they don't care. As long as they get profit, they will just pour money again so that the system will be much stronger than before. We think comparatively under our side, our method is much more efficient in terms of budget using. This cuts the budget allocation as a movement. When you hurt their facility, for example, or we image as a movement, this is heavily effective simply because the participation under our side is more inclusive for everyone can join, or we directly protest under our side, under all those reasons to get.
Thank you very much for your speech. To continue the case, I would like to call upon the second speaker of the government side of the House. For the second speaker of the government side of the House, don't forget to set your own timer as well as mention your POI preference.
Hi, just making sure I am audible, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm just rearranging my notes. I will start my speech very soon. Let me just get water. If anyone wants to POI me, I will be giving you guys time at around the 5:30 mark. But please, again, if I tell you once that POI later, I will be calling you guys back. Completely fine. I will be giving you guys time frame, but please be noticed and don't badger, please. Anyways, sorry, I'm just gonna get my timer. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Listen to the rhetoric that is opposition. They clearly did not read the info slide that clearly states that these hackers, these white hat hackers, are completely different to their predecessor, which is the black hat hackers, right? They are still ethical. If you aren't listening closely, this might seem like white hat hackers are the same as normal hackers. Let's look at on the info slide, right? White hackers are done by hacking those, attacking IT systems in order to strain, find vulnerability, yada yada. You already read the info slide, right? Basically, we're on the info side. Where does it say that they actively are digging dirt about companies, right? Where are they saying that they are doing illegal act that is highly protected? Because you need to understand that companies are still highly protected. They need to have the access for them and need to have the agreement from these companies to be able to actually seek what is going on, right? Logically speaking, white hat hacking is legal because unlike normal hackers, they're able to be held accountable in status quo. Please remember that. Ultimately, when they suggest a string line of problems, they do not answer to you why these problems are exclusive because note number one, the problem of leaked information will still exist on both sides. Companies selling your information, it still exists symmetrically. We say that the government can hack us just as easy as we can hack them. It is unlikely for us to invest in real hackers, not white hackers again, different two things, but we also need to defend our own websites as well, right? I will get into this later on. And technically about likelihood, remember, we are still doing this secretly and safely. We weren't openly opposing them. These white hackers are still ethical, which means they are completely legal. Presumably, as long as Marsha proves and suggests that it is a better form of getting these benefits for social movements, then this is something we should ultimately support, right? Before I move on and get to extensions, I would like to go into like 3 intuitions that the prompt from opposition bring, which is like tackling down right now, right? Number one, they talk about how like the principle of privacy, right? So they suggest that white hat hacking is illegal. So this is simply, we say that this is simply not true because, okay, it is also not like comparable for 3 reasons. Number one, white hat hacking requires access from the company first to be able to do their job, right? And secondly, that the very worst, they say if they are gonna like take that data, we say that it's unlikely for social movements because we do not seek blackmail. The only thing that they seek as a movement is to have security, to seek validation that yes, the website that we're spending a majority of their day on is safe for them, right? These movement groups such as like LGBTQ community, such as like people who are like pro-abortion, they need to have that security that is simply not something that they're able to actively seek for if they were to be in this case. And thirdly, white hat hackers are still a legit job. They have to follow guidelines and still follow a legal binding and law because the organization that hired them are dependent on the information that they give to be able to be used in court, which is legal evidence. Secondly, the principle of lack of fundings, right? So they suggest that our side, we are wasting money by using it to invest in white hat hackers. We say 2 things to this. Number one is a very good long-term investment because most social groups typically arrange things online, i.e. most activists in social groups happen online through video, through online talk shows that can be heavily involved with, that can actually like heavily involve more international attention instead of just proximity, right? We also say that social movements, we see that when they're like their data is in danger in times of when there's like in times of danger, such as like right now we see that rallying is like very dangerous because let's say like for instance pro-abortion, when you start protesting because the government has a strong regulation right now, and that essentially means that right now the best way to spread information and spread like things is through anonymity, through social media, where you aren't targeted from the government in itself, right? So let's get into like the individual extensions and then talk to you why the concerns from the opposition are relevant to the case, right? Firstly, how white hackers are able to benefit social movements in the first place, right? Notice how there's a key difference between white hackers and other hackers in the job market, as we've already elaborated, right? One key entail is the fact that these white hackers are completely legal and we already have consent from the companies themselves. I will elaborate more as to why these companies are more likely to opt into these in the first place. This means that whatever information found is legal and thus able to be used in court in sufficient evidence, right? This benefits us either 2 ways because number one, the money we get from court, we can be used to like, we can invest into like more charity that can actually help our case. And secondly, if there aren't any information that is like against what we think, then we can actually get more like security, and we have the benefit of security and reassurance that these companies aren't actually selling our information for anything, right? On the defense, we're actually able to use white hat hackers to also protect our own websites for organizations, right? We do not want our website to be hacked by illegal hackers hired by the government in itself, right? Or maybe other organizations that we are preaching against, right? Us as a movement group, especially ones such as like pro-abortion, that right now they can see that like they're tracking your flow cycle, they're tracking how much you're able to like, what time is your period and whatnot. We want to be able to actually invest in white hackers working on our side to be able to defend our organization website to make it more safe, right? And secondly, why big corporations are likely to opt into this. Notice how white hacking is within the realms of law, right? And they essentially essentially do is check whether or not your information is being sold off to other government cases or to other organizations, etc., etc. Essentially, that means two things. Number one, for big companies, they heavily rely on social communication, i.e., see it as a company such as Meta, Google, or Facebook that have the ability to see your personal chats information. They have a reputation to uphold, and their services are dependent on their users as well. This means not only do they have an obligation to allow white hackers to reach through their program and actually search whether or not they're telling the truth, and if they were to actually deny access, then this would be seen as outright telling us as a society that yes, we are selling your information. Yes, we do profit off of your privacy. This is extremely bad for our company in the long run. Before that, anyone want POI? Okay, I'll be moving on. For social move, why is this better? Take, for instance, anti-abortion, as I've already said, right? Who knows the type of apps like Flow where they like track their period cycle? You know, it has been like rumored that they sell information to the government to track period cycles. This is something that has been like heavily investigated. And depending on simply on the fact that these white hackers are still within the realms and right, their hacking methods is simply a business for them, right? The opposition cannot argue that the fact that their profession might see them as a liability to do illegal actions simply for the fact that they are not the same as hackers in the inflow side, right? We say that their jobs is still dependent on whether or not they can give customer satisfaction and still be within the realms of law in itself, right? Because the information that they rely on is still very important to a court case, right? So secondly, why the harms are so much larger if we play on opposition's alternative, right? Let me preemptivize this. They can play on two sides that still benefit the most vulnerable actors, i.e. people who are vulnerable to having their information leaked and whatnot. But again, they prioritize this as their own personal privacy. So when there is a website like Flow that is rumored to be selling your data, when they have the incentive to truly find out what is being monitored in this app, right? We say that the alternatives are much more dangerous because number one, what is the alternative? They actually seek information through real hackers. This means that they're prone to illegal actions and illegal activities. And not only that, but they're no longer allowed to use that information to be brought onto court, right? And secondly, they simply do not, the simply alternative is that they do not use hacking at all, which leads them to further injustice into your privacy being violated. This means you turn to more labor intensive such as protests to force the company to tell us if their information is being bought out willingly or not, right? But let's be real, it is very unlikely for those companies to do so because of the fact that they are so profit orientated, right? Whether way you play on opposition, the world cannot get any sort of benefit because your privacy is being still leaked out. But just in case, let's preemptivize what the opposition might bring back to the idea of social movements using these information as blackmail, what they fear, right? They suggest that there are potential risks, but note they don't actually give any structural proof of this because they simply suggest that these social movements get their hand on personal data and bigger companies and they'll use it, yada, yada, yada. But we say that this is not likely because number one, it is not a compelling argument. Remember who these white hackers are and who their jobs are. They aren't doing this to dig up dirt about other people. Their job is to simply make sure that the website that you're using is within their guidelines and within what you were like signing up for from the very beginning. But secondly, because social movement groups are typically the type of people that actively like know the harms of blackmail in the first place, right? And their way of using it is not likely because notice how social movement groups are made out of victims themselves, right? See this as feminist groups or LGBTQ community or pro-abortion, right? They are the exact people that have been harmed from their information being leaked. They're the exact people who understand just how scary it is your information to be leaked and your privacy to be invaded. For those reasons, we see it very unlikely for them to ask white hackers to do more than what their job entails and states, and we see it as them being very unlikely for them to do so, right? So ultimately, this is just for the near vulnerable actors, i.e. those who are living in constant fear of their own privacy. This is the best alternative and option for them as a movement group to be able to protect not only themselves, but also like make sure that they are like being protected from other companies in itself. That is why we are so proud to propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your speech. To continue the case, I would like to call upon the second speaker of the opposition side of the House. For the second speaker, don't forget to mention your POI preference as well as set your own timer. Here.
Sorry Kak, di sini lagi azan. Can we just wait for a little bit?
Yeah,
2 minutes?
sure. Yeah, just let us know when the azan is stopping. Is the adhan over?
Okay. I'm so sorry. Okay. Gender pronoun she, her. If you have any POI, please directly unmute yourself because I'm not able to check the chat box during my speech. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. As an activism, our accession is to change the system, change the ideal conduct of government, the immoral values that happen, even it's done by the powerful entities. We should push for changes, right? That's the reason why we exist in the status quo. This is where our arguments start. We want to show the image of activism is not ill influenced by powerful people, and to, so for example, to like be fragile. We want our approach perceived as urgent, as dangerous, so that our entities that we demand to change have the incentive and can be pushed directly, right? Too much strawman coming from opposition house, right? There are so many lack also. We still question what will they do when they already get the data coming from this white hacking, for example. All the benefits coming from them, it's contingent on how they can manifest the data, but it's still not clear anyway, right? That's kind of fly at the end. How we also question how public can like directly understand the issue just by random data coming from the white hacking, for example. That's why we think it shouldn't be counted. Two responses here. We think first on the idea of like whether it's ethical or not, and second on the idea of the alternative that they pushed us, right? Okay, let's see first. We say that the fatality on their case is they don't prove to you structurally and significantly about the manifestation on their white hacking process. In order for their benefit to fly, they have to explain how society will perceive this and why is it likely for society to give more support towards the social organization and how manifestation of their white hacking can change the evil actor under their side, right? Their ideas are kind of simplistic panels. They just say that the evil actor will change, they will mobilize the public just because they can give the data and like empower minority and etc without explain to us how it's likely, right? On the idea of characteristics of white workers here, they told you that white hackers don't necessarily do illegal act. We two responses here. First, this is unfair for them to only play on their best case scenario, thinking that any white hacking won't be known by the target of the society, right? Government, for example, will have possibility to know that there is a hacker trying to get into their system because they also have their own cybersecurity system. Once they catch the hacker, they won't see it as white or black hacker, right? They will just see it. They won't see it as such a thing. They will just see it as an attack, for example. It's simply an attack. What happens after this? Government utilize this approach to know the movement and blaming the movement for doing a certain crime and for doing a hacking itself. As they say they can use the data that they get from the hacking to go against the evil actor at court, for example. Judges, they are being denial to the characteristic that government has that big power to wash their hands and blaming the social organization as attacking their internal security and as a threat to society and simply close the access of the social movement to exist, right? The narrative that government will tell to the society is that there is a hacker that attacks our security and that we have to put them into jail and to make sure no further harm created, right? What does it prove you? It proves to you that probably you want to probably the degree of you want to send a message is still there, but the operation of your movement is less likely to happen. We think it's the moment your social movement falls, right? B, let's engage on their best case where white hacker is truly safe and legal panels. It's still bad because you can't really control the way the white hacker operate panels. Notice they are the hacker. Their operations are so abstract to the extent they would have like uncontrollable action when they want to attack a certain system, for example. That's why, because it's uncontrollable, it's very risky for us to allow this happen and to represent our value as a social movement. We think we should just oppose this, right? Second of all, right, on the idea of alternative, they told you real hacker is the alternative in here. Simply it's not true, panels. It's just a form of strawman in our case. We don't want to do this. We want, from the first, we say that we want to direct harm, such as demonstration, for example, such as eco-terrorism, or not doing a hack, right? Because at best, what hacker doing under their side, it's just a digital impact, not a real impact that we want. I will explain more in my extension here. What I'm going to explain in my extension, I will talk more layers of talking about the perception of people towards the movement and how we're going to have a better message under our Saddle House and how we're going to have a sustainable movement under our Saddle House. Let's see. The main claim is how using white hack would bring nothing significant towards the society. Okay. The characterization and context we have. Understand how white hacking operate and how society see them. We say white hacking characterization, they do their operation and publicizing secretly. It looks like the moment they want to show like a certain issue like oppression, government failure, exploitative company would just directly spread everywhere without necessarily explain where do this data coming from, right? At best, probably people under their side might know the issue, but the degree of importance towards the issue would be less than panels because no clear source just easily perceived as a random issue, random ocnum, for example, without clear accountability we oppose. Meaning it's just useless for social movement to spread awareness and bloat issue from this, right? That's why most of the time movement can't claim this data as their matter in movement, right? Because we can't prove the credibility of the data. If you are so brave to like doing this under your side, you explicitly say it's come from white hacking, it just become worse panels. How? Because we are going to perceive as criminal because of pursuing illegal things, right? Even they have told you it's not illegal because the intention and the operation relatively safe, we think that it's just nonsense panels. Understand that regardless the intention is good, what is matter is the impact. Hacking are so abstract. You can't control just because there's a regulation. Most of the time, a success hacking process is because they are able to find unpredictable way to break the system, meaning the potential to be uncontrollable and harmful are still open. That's why it's still illegal and unethical, right? They should engage with this case. It's also more harmful because it can like that this approach of social movement using a white hacking can also demonized by media to bring prejudice towards the social movement values, or like saying that social movement using unethical conduct, that's why it's bad, right? The moment social movement are labeled as unethical and criminal, this is where our action will perceived as bad anyway, regardless the purpose at the end, right? We cannot build the image that more safe for people to engage, or we can build a more appealing to the public, or we can even like send our message because of people already labeled us as the criminal and bad, right? Nothing can achieve under proposition Saddle House, right? But under our side, we choose to not even pursuing an approach that's still questionable and still unethical, right? Or because we don't want to take the risk who can ruin the process and trust that we have been progressively take as a social movement. We think this is the moment we can like in line with our goal and like make our member sustain at the end, right? But let's have a second layer of analysis here. It's in terms of sustainability, right? We say it's better to stick in the status quo through like campaign, demonstration rather than use a sensational approach, while it's more likely to or having most potential prone to die, right? Our social movement prone to die. We say so much hack precedents exist, such as Bin got hacked, Cominfo got hacked, but what is the impact? Nothing. But it's only a month become a trend, but after that it just get closed by the government. It proved to you that it's not effective anymore. Under our side, we are more sustainable because our fund would effectively distribute to the victim. We are going to spread massive information about where the victim can go to heal, for example, and we say that our impact are more real than just a digital or data harms that create in their side, right? In conclusion, we have a real impact, proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for the speech. To continue the case, I would like to call upon the third speaker of the government side of the House. For the third speaker of the government side of the House, floor is yours. Here. Don't forget to mention your POI preference as well as set your own timer.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible and visible.
Okay. So hold on. I'm gonna take a sip of water. My pronouns are she, her. I'm gonna take my POIs. That. Okay. I think that's it. So, okay. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hat hacking is legal and ethical. No one can stop us from using that as a mean of protection and future precaution. The reason why it is legal and protected under law is because it is defense, not offense. And it is legal because that information is later on reported back to the corporation that they hacked. Look at how hackathons hack into social medias. Those are legal because you report them back and because it protects the system, not attack the people. We're not trying to get into like gov security or whatever they accuse us of. We are protecting ourselves. This has been clear from the first speaker. They keep denying this. Some rebuttals to Octo. Firstly, they cite that our benefit is not exclusive. They tell you that they are unsure with what we will do with its information once we get the data, right? We already told you in PMD that it's better, we will use white hat hackers to be able to get legal proof to be used in court. And at the very least, we will get the benefits of validation of safety. But we also get the benefit of defense. In opposition word, they didn't tell us any sort of mechanism on how they, as a social group, are able to fix leak of privacy data. So no sort of protection at all for their SQ, where violence is still prone, where social movement are in danger of government power, i.e. police, weapons, things that we are unable to physically fight against. Like, second, their argument are heavily reliant on the fact that white hat hackers are normal hackers. Not true. White hat hackers are different from black hat hackers, which is illegal. But let's get into these ideas, right? We told you that we not only do white hat hackers that have a legal job, but they also have legal binding. Their information and their work is contingent on the fact that their activity is legal and they have consent from the organization that they're searching through, right? Even if they tell you that the reason why we trust these white hackers because they are merely ethical, they seem to forget the fact that DPM tells you that they are also legitimate jobs and have legal binding to the organization that hired them. Most of their concerns are irrelevant this way. Two questions then. Firstly, on protection and defense, and secondly, on externalities. First question, who better protects these activists? First observation, they said that we're not strategic, that we're going to be portrayed as a lawbreaker and the government will take us down. No, this will not happen. Why won't this happen? First, there are literal tech crimes done by companies, big companies, and the government. They have more tech, more protection, and they even use illegal means like black hat hackers to attack those who oppose them, like the social movements, like publishing documents of immigrants to delegitimize them. Meanwhile, we characterize from the very beginning that white hat hacking is different from black hats. White hat is legal, black hats are not. Secondly, unlike black hat hackers who access systems illegally with malicious intent and mostly for personal gains, which is usually used as a tool for like hacktivism, white hat hacking serves as like a temporary defense to that. White hat hackers are ethical hackers. They hack for the sole purpose of improving a system of parties that they contract them with. We can control them because they are legally binded. They have contracts with the company and can be held accountable by the law. This is the point that they keep on not getting, which makes this debate so messy. An example of this is like Richard Stallman, Charlie Middle, etc. The point is that this is fiat power has by the virtue of its definition. Opposition cannot do definition challenge because it is a fact that white hat hackers are legal and do exist in status quo. They do work, so they can be used. Second point, they said that we're gonna make ourselves vulnerable because we show ourselves to the public and allow our image and standing to be weakened or whatever. What they don't understand is that we are investing in them. We can do it safely and secretly. This means that social movement can safeguard the information that we are hiring white hat activists in the later on. We say white hat hackers use professional methods such as penetration testing, research programming, etc., all of which are methods that are less likely to be found out, especially when white hat hackers are professional and binded under things like non-disclosure agreement or NDA, confidentiality clause in contract, and etc. Even if they are found out, given that these are professions that are considered ethical, we can see it from Charlie Miller, who was recognized as an ethical white hat hacker working for U.S. national security. Up has to prove why society will likely backlash into social movement for protecting safety of the data from black hat illegal hackers. If public finds out, it's clear that they will side with us because we're literally not doing anything wrong. Number 3, on budget, they said that it's gonna waste budget. Note that, like Monik said, big activism movements that garner attention are vulnerable and have a lot of budget because they have supporters. Like BLM, they have so much donation, so much support. Do not underestimate the power of marginalized communities, right? Who are usually so much more united than the majority. Even if you're not gonna be united but why single to go, your supporter base will most likely be of marginalized people. They can garner hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions in little days. Budget is not a problem. The security breach is. That means that regardless of the outcome, you won't waste our money, and then you will likely get plenty of support by the community behind you. This is a long-term investment that is needed to secure your movement and make sure that you are protected, like Monik said. Number 4, on the movement itself, right? They say our movement is going to stop. No, exactly, because now we have protection now. We are able to continue because we mitigate the potential harms of our opponents taking us down through illegal means beforehand. It is on your side that these movements movements are vulnerable and prone to be taken down. Before I move on, any POIs? I see none.
Regardless
Okay,
it's legal or not, you still haven't explained to us how just from the data minority will get protection. Please give us the process of analysis.
We gave that straight from the first speaker. These white hat hackers are going to identify the security breaches. They're gonna make sure that no information breach is gonna go. They're gonna make sure that the activism itself is safe and protected from the black hat hackers that these parties and government are going to use in order to take the activism down. Second, they said that white hat hacking won't create uncomfortability. They said that points were symmetrical on both sides. We know uncomfortability and pressure is needed. That's why we do white hat hacking. What did they say on this point? They said that companies have an anti-hack system, so it'll be extremely difficult to do. Then the LO said that they will continue to get more revenue as they operate, and thus they will continue to up these anti-hack systems. Now, even in the case that these companies have anti-hack systems, we think that this is a cost that we're willing to take since we know it won't be in vain anyway. Our hackers won't just, no thank you, pick a random company. These are people knowledgeable in the field, and they will of course go for companies that have judged to not follow data privacy laws that they can target. The more that these companies are exposed, the more people will opt out of their dangerous services. This means that these companies will get less revenue as they lose customers and lose users. What do we give you? We give you several possible externalities, right? Before that, let's reel it back and go back to what PM clearly laid out for you. Firstly, white hat hacking is illegal. White hat hacking is legal due to its nature as self-defense. And secondly, the bugs you find are reported back to the company, and you tell the public to secure their data. Now, what do you get on our side of the house then? Firstly, Marcia told you that you get better security. There was insufficient response on their side. All they ran was that, oh, this is unethical. That's not enough. Ethicality is subjective, and we're even protected by the law. So now you measure it based on the objective impact, which is security. Secondly, they then told you that we respect consent. Companies are given this privilege because we're not breaching into their data as individuals, and these companies are supposed to be responsible for your data. It is our right to know how our data is being used, being spread, or even being sold by some dubious company that want harm. Even in the worst case, this is a benefit that you get on our side, that on our side of the house, that is huge. Thirdly, in the most likely case, you protect the marginalized from surveillance on our side in terms of activism. Our PM already told you so many reasons about this. Fourthly, but from Monique's side, she told you about how companies now have no choice but to opt into it. The more these companies are exposed, the smaller their customer base becomes, right? The benefits that white hacktivism get compared to the benefits companies get are inversely proportional. It's zero sum. The loss of support for these companies is a gain for support for these movements. And so what is the weighing on this? In terms of security and mitigation, we provide social movements with proper prevention, right? Data is protected, the movement is safe, and that everything is legal. It's legally done. Meanwhile, on their side, movements are vulnerable. It will eventually fall because they don't protect themselves. And the parties that we actually oppose will be able to harm us through illegal means like black hat hackers and so on. For all those reasons, you have to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. To continue the case, I would like to call upon the third speaker of the opposition side of the House. For the third speaker of the opposition side of the House, don't forget to set your own timer as well as mention your POI preference. Here.
Okay, check my audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Preferred pronouns is she, her. If you have any POI, just directly unmute yourself. Let me take a drink. Excuse me. All right. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Changes. This is what we want through our broken system that has created so much harms for people in the ground that we have fought for so long, right? Those who are able to prove whether or not it is ethical for activism movement to invest on this and which size that can create a better and effective changes through the urgency that is created should win into this debate. There are several reasons on why Team Riau's cases filed against Sulteng, right? Firstly, no likelihood from the start on how people will receive the sense of comfort just because you already hacked their system past. How is this able to prove on how people will be more comfortable under your side of the house, right? There is no likelihood from the start. Secondly, there is no any mechanization what they will do with the data after they hack it. We don't understand, right? If you just leave the data after if you just leave the data there after you hack it, then what kind of change or urgency that will be created under their side, right? All benefits that has been mentioned by them cannot fly at the end. And thirdly, we think that there is no engagement on how society will perceive this and how people will support our movement. The society is less educated. People are still skeptic with the terms of like with the wording of hacker, right? Even if they say that people already know that this white hacker is a good hacker or like ethical hacker, we say, and they said how people already talk about in social media. We say that this is not enough to even like change all the mindset of people about hacker itself, right? We say even if this happened at best, but it is still very much illegal, right? We say even if this debate is not talking about whether or not it's illegal or not, we should be talking about which size that can create a much greater impacts, that can create a much greater changes that I will prove on why it's only exclusive under our side, right? Government failed to address the biggest issue of minority. Listen, panels, they keep glorifying minority need protection from data issue, right? First, it's not the biggest issue of minority. What minority currently need is protection. Someone who can speak up from them, not necessarily data protection. That is a very later agenda, we think. Prove to you their main case has failed, right? Secondly, if you want to address the biggest issue, vote for opposition. It's within our agenda. Several responses before I move to my class, right? Firstly, they told you that white hackers are legal and not breaking the laws. Judges, please understand. White hackers are still breaching data and privacy anyway. The legality of them is still very questionable and shaky. Some governments even do not provide clear spectrum on how is ethical hacking and how is the unethical hacking. Moreover, society and government itself has been very skeptical towards the word of hacking, right? But even if it's legal, we think there's no direct effect that can be felt to the social movements and the evil actors anyway. There is no practical harms created on their side panels. Even if it's legal, we think that it will only be sensational and a short-term moment where maybe people will talk about it everywhere, but there is no direct impact towards the evil actors itself, right? Also, even if it is legal, but government or big companies still have the power to bring this case to court, right? This results to the social organization has to spend money even more to be able to win the court. So many laws under set, don't vote for them. B, the white hackers will be on anonymous identity judges, means that the society will not know which movement did this and who is actually doing this hacking, right? Or even if eventually people can identify who is behind this anonymous identity, meaning okay, there is a possibility for people to know who are behind the identity. There is no threat, right? But even if already very safe, means it shows that there is no silver lining and the exclusivity from the message, which means the message is not delivered to the society, means the purpose of social movements fails, right? About information, and lastly, about information leak, this is also time consuming and tiring and money consuming, right? At the worst case, when they have invest so many money to the white hackers, they will also have to pay the court process when government or companies sue them. Government team just say that they will hire white hackers for their own good. There is no explanation on trade-off on why is it justified for them to use it. We think that they say that the goal is to fix the error of these companies. Therefore, there is no data that got leaked. A separate response for these panels. They told you that the white hackers propose is to fix and point out the error in the internal system, so there will be no data being leaked, right? We say there is not social movement interest. They exist to publicly condemn what is wrong done by companies. If we help them, there is not legal binding that company will follow social movement interest or suggestion. 100% cause social movement do it secretly to begin with. So we pour resources with no certainty. Meanwhile, in the process, there should be a safety net for the company. That meanwhile, company allows movement to engage internally. They should not do trouble outside with the social campaign, demo, or mobilize the labor union, right? This lessens the strength of social movement, as we want people to witness the demo and witness what harmful cause the company does, friends. Lastly, what worse is if social movement join, they can be complicit because they work with exploitative company. This diminishes thanks social movement as the only platform that can go against the company. Let's move to my class then on whether or not investing on this will create an effective changes. let us notice, they say that investing on this help the marginalized community on how it can protect their data because company failed to do so. We question what is the analysis on why if you do this, then it will have the minority group in the very first place, right? Government cannot just throw on one-liner benefit and do not explain why is it likely to even happen under their side. You cannot credit this argument. Look, how we bring you structural arguments on how true white hat hacking is where you will not create any sense of discomfort for these people because they don't care if you show them their vulnerability of these companies, right? They are too powerful and privileged to care about this. We don't understand why showing the vulnerability of these companies will provide a sense of comfort for these people. No likelihood this will never be achievable under government side, right? But even if at best on the case that they give a sense of comfort for these people, but this will not give any significant impact or urgency for these companies to change. Then they respond, Penas. They say that how these people will purely and correctly do their job. We have taken this down, right? On why you cannot guarantee how these hackers do their job, right? It is hard for you to even observe or supervise in a big cyber world where especially those who are pro in this type of world, they can do anything they want. In conclusion, no change that will occur under side government. Secondly, then they say that this will push these companies to strengthen their security. We don't understand why this is beneficial for us, right? If they want to strengthen their security because they don't want to get hacked anymore, well, yes, this might happen, but they will still not create any change that benefits or that benefit us or even have the vulnerable actors itself, right? If you're talking about how these companies will strengthen the security of the data of the users, Panas, there are no guaranteed explanation on how under their side this will happen, how this data can create a form of protection for minority community, right? What is the comparative then? Firstly, on the magnitude of funds, we think on the terms of funding, investing on this is where you will waste so much funding and time just to provide a shelter for these white hackers. This is harmful, especially when you want to invest on someone that is pro in technology, meaning this will be so expensive, right? You will waste so much time and money to only provide a shelter for these hackers. Secondly, pals, we say that we are exclusive because we want to stay on our current agenda, which we say is far more effective. Protests on the streets directly come for the company, right? Eco-terrorism, where we say this gives direct impact to the company. Secondly, then, on which sides they can create a better message or urgency. We think that the comparative here, panels, is that as what is happening on our side, the exclusivity is that we'll create a better message or send a better urgency and awareness under our side, right? Social movement will have to prove on how the data is credible, how people will receive the message and perceive our movement. Imagine when people find out that we have been collaborating with hackers, spending all our funding just to provide a shelter for these white hat hackers. That is what ruin the trust and ruin how people perceive us, rather than creating a direct impact. Instead, we decide to invest on this, right? Therefore, we think that all those reasons Sulawesi Tengah deserve to win into this debate.
Thank you very much for your speech. To conclude the case of the opposition side of the House, I would like to call upon the reply speaker of the opposition side of the House. Floor is yours. Here.
Check, I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Setting my on timer first. Okay. Starting my reply in 3, 2, 1. I think this debate falls into 3 main points, right? But before that, we think that what you need to understand, panels, the way in this debate should be on which team can give structural reasons and reason on you, right? First, whether or not the alternative that we have right now is enough. We told you that protesting on the street or attacking the company is way more safer because you don't risk the bad image in the future to be seen as criminal or law breaker as the movement, right? It's important because movement image is something that determine whether people want to pay attention on your issue or not. We taught you that. Second of all, how this will give threat and discomfort towards the evil actors and create towards the changes at the end, right? They never engaged to our first argument about how white hacking don't give discomfortability at all towards evil actor, right? Comparative to us, we create the discomfortability that we want. When you protest massively on the street, for example, if they can't explain why they will create discomfortability and push the evil actors to feel the threat, all their benefit can fly simply because there is no incentive coming for them to just changes, right? We don't understand how their benefit should be credited. This debate should focus on talking about how activism and organization operate. Therefore, team that able to prove the most benefit for the social movement should win in today's debate. But let's see the like government case first, right? They bring the urgency from the first. They are already like very problematic because they are bringing the urgency talking about minority protection and data issue, right? We already told you it's not something that really urgent, but and then it's not the biggest issue of minority, right? Minority more likely to need more practical benefit and real benefit in the real world rather than digital world, right? We told you that in our approach that we can under opposition of the house, our fund will directly allocate it to the victim, whether to cater to the victim needs. We are going to spread massive information about where the victim can go to heal, provide a shelter, for example, or even like we want to do like speak up to blow the issue as what happened in the status quo. We want to keep the progressivity until we gain our goal, right? Comparatively in propositions of the house, they only play on digital world. At best, the benefit can feel directly and solve the urgency of the real in the status quo. That's why we think in terms of this, we think we should win, right? But second of all, appealing on the idea of appealing on public, right? We have told you that the moment that this the idea of white hacking become ethical and unethical, it still will perceive as bad in status quo, right? Because the moment you're going to like uphold this idea, this is the moment you will ruin your image and your message can be said to the public, and at the end it's useless, and you also can have like a good message at the end, right? Lastly, we already told you about the in terms of efficiency of movement and on allocating budget. We also win in this point because we say that budget that we have as a social movement is very limited to the extent that we have to allocate it wisely, so that we need to have the approach that have a more certain in the impact, and if we can and investing in white hackers, we have proved to you that it's something that make a lot of loss, and this is where our social movement can survive at the end, right? That's why we think that in terms of three main questions in today's debate, we prove why we should win.
Thank you very much for your speech.
Just rearrange my notes. Okay, that's fine. I will start my speech very shortly. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a world where you are in constant fear of your own privacy, where suddenly you tell your friends, what you tell your family is able to be monitored and sold to other people who oppose you. We said that when you are a weaker actor, we have to act safe and privately. In status quo, where rallying and social actions are seen radical and typically are met by police forces and scrutiny, we say that there is a much better way of gaining allies and spreading our voices without needing to depend on proximity and rallying on the streets. Just because the opposition cannot imagine this world doesn't mean that this is the reality of the situation right now. Note that this is an urgency debate, right? We are still playing in the status quo where our own government cannot protect us, but instead typically against us. Please make sure to handle your burdens. They are unable to really accept those harms on opposition side. Therefore, they were unable to engage with a big portion of our arguments, which means you could only technically win on our side. Two things that I will be bringing you today. Number one, the things that they did not respond and engage to, and secondly, comparing both cases, right? There are three arguments that the opposition did not engage with, which that alone would technically win us the debate. Number one, our unique benefits that they tell us that we are not going to be likely to achieve, even though we have given you so many arguments as to why, right? At best, you're going to use this illegal information to use against and use the money that we earn and cash into charities, right? Into helping vulnerable members secretly by making their life more or by making like more infrastructure, right? Even if the opposition tells us that this is unlikely to happen, we say that at the very least we are able to provide ourselves a place of a safe website where we have full proof and making sure that no one can hack into, because we have already repeatedly hired these white hackers to make sure that it is safe. Once again, by definition, I don't really need to elaborate more on this, that white hackers are much more different than black hackers, right? Secondly, our idea about comfort of people, unique benefit. We get that people will feel safe using the services or the platforms after being hacked indefinitely, because now what happens? Transparency and security. We know the things that they're supposed to be safe, right? Note that we hack platforms as we all included ourselves, right? We use our own platforms. We will tell people to actually use and hack this to make sure that there are no other way of like hacking into this. The comfort for the people comes in terms of how they feel safe joining into these movements. We tell you this from Marsha, but you did not listen to us, and that's exactly why we went on that class, right? Even if Yeso's opposition is a heavy investment we can use for allies and whatnot, but note there are 2 things, four things actually. Number one, Rally is not currently safe and status quo. We've already mentioned this. They did not elaborate on it at all. Secondly, there's a long-term investment because this increases the increase of like influence in media. Thirdly, we already explained that we have a huge budget and movements that are targeted typically to the larger ones where there's a lot of support, right? They say that we have limited budget, but at the end of the day, it's not really into our case, right? And fourthly, they tried to credit this point to them without proper basis. Judge, please don't buy into this. They are very much naive into that, right? Thirdly, we get much more better long-term benefits, right? Remember how we give you reasons as to why social movements are typically more keen to spreading their voice and spreading awareness through websites instead through social media, right? We say that there is a uniqueness for us because we invest in making sure that our website is safe for others and from other hackers that might oppose to us, because now we are seen as the most weakest actor, right? We cannot typically see them doing illegal actions, and we need to make sure that ourselves, our website is safe, right? To make sure that our movement is still viable at the end of the day. They do not respond to this, so this incentive, we've been in that class, right? Meanwhile, they don't have any benefits on their side. On top of that, they continue to shoulder the harms and let these powerful parties basically jeopardize the status quo, right? They did not respond to 2 things. Number one, our point about consent and the negative externalities of private breach. They failed to explain how they can mitigate those harms on their side. Secondly, our worries about the alternative of protesting and status quo, right? They completely gloss over that, and how this is much far better if we were to actually get international support instead of living off of proximity, right? Let's compare our cases at the end of the day, right? On opposition side, their work looks like where there are no practical solutions, where the impacts would be as big as the magnitude or as suitable as our own, right? We say that on our side, they didn't, on their side, they did not defend any sort of mechanism as to how they are still able to provide safety for these protesters when you go against companies, because they are still profit oriented, because they still have much more power than we do, and how they still be able to be seen as credible validation that companies are safe when, remember, they are still profit oriented, as I already said. And we say that regardless, if you are in opposition role, you will be seen at worst as radical. I have already told you this on my speech, while also not getting any sort of validation from companies in general, making sure that which makes your movement much more worse at the long run because your image is not tainted, right? Vulnerable actors for this social movement is the best course of action for them to take on the urgency. And because of the technicalities of dependency of social movements on the internet, we say that is the best option for them. On a grand scale, we give you counterbalance for companies. And at the very least, our side gives you that validation and protection. You have to side on our side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your speech. Thank you very much for both of government and opposition side of the house. Congratulations for making it to the Octo finals. You guys can virtually shake hands and virtually interact, and since this is a silent round, so yeah, please leave this breakout room, and then we will announce the results in the main room very soon. Once again, thank you very much and good luck, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for the debate.
Alright, halo Kak Cantik, halo Jen. Ini